Hi, everybody. I'm here with Rob Devlin, and we're going to be talking about recruiter enablement. So, Rob, great to see you. And you always bring color to the video screen. Give us an
Not so
intro to
much
you.
today. I'm giving you black and white with a bit of a pop. But yeah, it's great to see
Yes.
you, Adam. Thanks for having me on. I'm Rob Devlin. I've worked in recruitment now for about 18 years on every side of the desk you can imagine. So agency, RPO, in-house, and more recently just running my own consulting business. Been very fortunate to work with organisations around the world, most recently in healthcare, but also in FMCG, food manufacturing. So really privileged to have worked in a lot of great organisations in some really interesting industries.
So, let's talk about recruiter enablement. I recall, I don't know if it was when we first met, you were leading recruitment at my dentist. We might have met before that, I'm not sure, but like you've seen it from so many different angles. Like, what's recruiter enablement? How do we enable recruiters to be better at their jobs? And then I'm going to come on to another angle on this that I've just suddenly thought about, which would be good to explore with you. But yeah, what's it all about? What's good things to do?
Yeah, so for me, I believe that recruiter enablement is a lot about having the basics in place and having a really good foundation for your team to work from. And recruitment is a complex job, and in my experience, I think it has become more and more complex. There are more and more ways to do things, more technologies and processes, certainly than it was, when I started. I remember starting pre-LinkedIn era. That's given my age away a little bit. So I always really feel from a recruiter's perspective, we want to give them a great set of tools, but we want to try and make it as easy as possible for them to navigate that toolkit and to feel really vested in wanting to go to that toolkit and to use it. And for me, recruiter enablement is not just about enabling the recruitment team. It's about enabling, the full business, and more so, especially when you're working in organizations which might have decentralized multi-site recruitment, or where your recruitment operating model is a blend of centrally recruited roles and locally recruited roles. I think it is really important that you've got simple, well-defined processes and policies, and you've got the resources to train and put the capability into everybody that has got the task of recruiting. So I think it's a really broad church, recruitment enablement. I think it's a really interesting topic.
Okay, let's talk about processes because, I mean, recruitment is dynamic, and you're right, by the way. There's more ways of getting your tasks done than there ever has been. So, does that mean it's more important than ever to create the right process for that task and to make sure that everybody's following the best process, or do we allow people to go and be, resourceful and entrepreneurial on their own? Or is it a blend?
Yeah, I've seen it work. I've seen it work well in both regards. So I think recruiters are always going to want to have a degree of autonomy and creativity, and I think we should encourage that. Recruitment for me is such a personal thing to do, and I'd never want to run a team or have a team that felt stifled and that they had to work so rigidly that they couldn't develop their own processes. And a lot of the best processes and ideas come from the recruiters, that either born of frustration or born of necessity, or,
Yeah.
the recruiters are the ones that often come to me and say, hey, have you seen this new technology? Or, hey, what about this? Or can we make this easier? So I think it depends on a organization to organization basis. I think it can depend on how mature the recruitment strategy is within that organization, and also what the recruitment strategy needs to do. In some of the healthcare businesses that I've worked in, there can be very rigid requirements around certain aspects of the recruitment process. For example, onboarding generally is very high risk in terms of background checks and so on and so forth. So in that regard, you'd want some really rigid policies and processes, but maybe more at the front end in terms of engaging and the types of language that we would use. I think you want less process and probably more guidelines there for the team to kind of feel they can put their own stamp on things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you almost beat me to it when you talked about the decentralized kind of environment, and that's the one thing I wanted to pick up with you on. And um, if I think about like a company like my dentist, but this would extend to many healthcare and retail type organizations, the recruiters are not necessarily filling the jobs, but actually they are enabling the hiring managers, which in that context would be like the practice leader, or whatever it might be, to actually do recruitment. So
Mhm.
what are the challenges in that, and like what are the things people need to think about?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to the earlier point around consistency and process. So I
Yeah.
think when you've got a decentralized model, you want to make sure that you've got very, very clearly defined, best practice guides and processes and tools that are available, whether they are, scripts and guidance on how to sell your employer brand or your employer value proposition, training on how to use assessment and selection tools in a fair and unbiased way. So, all the classic elements, I think you're going to want to have a really great toolkit. And I've been fortunate to work for some great organizations that have got, learning management systems where we've been able to partner with our L&D teams and create great content and really embed that training as part of the employee lifecycle. So if you're recruited as a hiring manager, mandatory training modules, checks and balances in place really to make sure that before somebody starts interviewing a candidate, they've been through, that training program. And then I also just think a commitment to ongoing training with your operational partners. So really trying to help your stakeholders understand the importance of ongoing training. The legalities of recruitment often change, especially when you're working in countries like the United States. There's a lot of nuances and complexity on a state by state and even city by city level. So I think to be good at this in a decentralized way, you need to have high levels of engagement from your stakeholders. You need to have a really great partnership way of working with your learning and development team. And I think if you've got those ingredients in place, you can start to create some great toolkits to use.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the risk? What's the jeopardy in getting all this wrong?
Well, there can be very real, consequences legally. That springs to mind, particularly through assessment and selection, and some of the more, litigious countries that you might be operating in. You need to be very, very mindful of that. So, in those areas of assessment and selection, you're going to want to have some really robust, training and policies and process. I think, the risk around, mis-selling a role or mis-selling an employer brand proposition, probably less so. The proof is obviously in the pudding as to whether or not you're attracting the best candidates and you're getting those through the door. And, certainly in the healthcare sector, my experience is that it is so hyper competitive and it is so challenging. The difference between getting a candidate to say yes or no can be down to the language that you're using, in the first conversation you have. And when that candidate goes to the dental office or the doctor's office, are they hearing the same language and the same passion from a hiring manager? And again, if those two things don't quite line up, or one's oversold or one's undersold, it can be the difference between a candidate accepting your job or any of the other job offers they're fortunate to have. So I do think, the different types of risk. The greatest risk, I would say, is always the legal risk associated, but there's just a real risk you're not going to hire the best people if you've not got some level of, control and governance.
Yeah, I totally agree. You want your, I mean, I'm going to slightly dehumanize recruiters here. I absolutely love recruiters, but your recruiters, from a marketing perspective, your recruiters are a channel to market. And you want that channel to be consistent, whether it's in Leicestershire or whether it's in Wales or whether it's in Cornwall. You want that same message going out to the market from the recruiters and from the hiring managers. And so I think there's definitely a place for scripts and templates and like frameworks for this type of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the best examples, or one of the, the best pieces of work that I did was at my dentist, where we created an entire new employer brand proposition and value set, and we achieved really high levels of engagement through the business. And we ran, it was part of our annual conference, and we got our operational colleagues really, vested into the different values and really thinking about how they can talk the values through relative to their regional business and area business and so on and so forth. So it was a huge honor to be part of that project. And we really saw the benefit of getting people to buy in emotionally to it. In other organizations, they can be at different stages of the journey and attach different levels of value to it. So it is quite challenging, I think, to get your stakeholders engaged around those concepts.
Yeah, wonderful. Rob, what's your call to action for anybody that's listening to this around, like, how do they make contact with you? What do you want to be having conversations with people about? What are you're the go-to person for what?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm always looking to develop my client network. So my specialism most recently has been in healthcare. So I've been fortunate to work with businesses here in the UK, in the US and Canada. My skills are pretty broad, as you'd expect, having been doing this for so long. A lot of the clients that I work with are asking for help in diversifying their talent pools or around, sourcing strategy in particular. So they may be struggling to secure nurses or dentists or specialist doctors, and the traditional routes to market may not be working. So I'd like to think that I can offer some innovation and expertise around that. Technology is another really big one, Adam. So you'll be very familiar with your own background. A lot of the clients that I work with are looking to refresh or reconfigure the systems that they've got. They may be looking to update the tech stack, get new kit in. So always really keen and excited to talk to organizations about that. And, I'm available on LinkedIn. People can reach me by all the contact details that are there. And, I'm always available and happy to chat to different clients.
Wonderful. Rob, thanks for your time. Good to see you again.
You too. Thanks, Adam.